Hey, welcome to Board Game Hot Takes, the podcast where we give our immediate reactions to the hottest board games just minutes after playing them. My name's Tim.
And this is Chris.
This is Adam.
And today, instead of giving a hot take review on a game we just finished playing, we're going to give hot take reviews on a bunch of games we finished playing this weekend. Because this weekend was BGHT LongCon. So this was our local biannual convention where the four of us, Chris, Adam, and I, as well as our occasional co-host Steve, who plays with us every week, we all got together in Long Beach, California for 5 days of gaming. And we're going to kind of run through that whole weekend, talk about all the games that were played this weekend. Before we jump into that, got a couple quick things. First of all, I was just invited to co-host on a podcast called the Cardboard Time Podcast. Arwen is the host there, and she invited me on and had a really great time on there. I thought it was a pretty interesting conversation. We talked about a couple of games we played, but then she asked me about a couple of things that I don't know we've talked about much. One is she asked about the process of making the podcast. So if you want to kind of get behind the curtain a little bit, hear how the sausage is made, that's a good way for you to kind of understand what we put into the podcast every week. And then she talks a little bit about how content creators, how board game media can stop FOMO, can stop hyping up games. And I thought it was a pretty interesting conversation. I have a lot of strong feelings about that topic. So I was really excited to talk about it. So you can go check that out right now, the Cardboard Time Podcast, wherever you listen to podcasts. But next, before we get into the games we played this weekend, I asked a poll on Twitter, which I do every week. And if you don't follow us on Twitter, you can find us at BG_hot takes. This week, I asked the poll, how often do you win board games with your group? The reason I asked this poll is because we played something like, 14 games together, the four of us, and I didn't win any of them. Not a single win of the entire weekend.
Spoiler alert.
And so that was pretty surprising to me, I think. But I've kind of had this trend at the last two times we did this. Every time we've gotten together, the four of us to game all weekend, my win rate has been pretty abysmal. When generally I think I do pretty good. I have a decent win rate. So we're going to talk a little bit about why that is. But here's how people responded on Twitter. Most of the time was 22.3%. So over 20% think they're the best gamer in their group. 42%, same as other players, so about average. 23.2% less than other players, and 12.5% almost never. So a decent amount of gamers that even though they don't feel like they're great at playing games, still love playing. And I don't blame them. I have to say that even with 0 wins this weekend, I had a great time the whole time. And it really doesn't sting too much, doesn't bug me that I lost so much, that you guys, did significantly better. But I do have some theories and thoughts about why that happened. What do you guys think? Did you expect this? Is this normal? Do you guys usually beat me? Am I a terrible gamer?
Man, what a loaded question. Yes, Tim, you suck.
The worst.
Why are you still doing this?
Absolutely horrible.
No, let's I think Tim is coming to terms with this, so we're going to help him process and figure this thing out. So let's put Tim on the couch and see what's going on here. No, I think I'm shocked. I don't understand it at all. And it's not like you seem stressed out. So I don't think you're crushing under the pressure of playing games with us. I mean, not that we're not intimidating, but that doesn't seem to be the problem. You don't seem to, I don't know. I mean, I can't think of a single thing that that seems different about you when you're playing games with us in person versus when you're playing them on BGA or playing with them on Tabletop Simulator. And I'll even add in there playing in person, because I played plenty of games with you in person and you win a lot of those too. It seems very specifically related to our competitions, our cons. So I know, Adam, you said you have a couple theories about this. I would love to hear them.
Yeah, well, first, a couple notes. Tim, Sarah, and I knew your historical record at these cons, so we had you over before the con started to play a game of Dune Imperium, and we let you win that one. We gave you the courtesy win. We made it look like we were trying really, really hard, but we let you have that one so you wouldn't feel totally deflated for the weekend. I think we knew what was coming. So no, I answered, well, first, are we talking about how Tim never wins at these cons, or are we talking about the poll question? I want to hear how you guys answered the poll question too.
For me, that one's kind of an easy one. I think every game group has one of these guys, but I'm like the schlub who kind of shows up and is like dum dum dum, and I do a bunch of dumb things and complain about how bad the game is and usually lose. So I probably have the worst win record of the bunch of us, but I'm okay with that.
Yeah, I'm in the same boat. I put that I win usually less than the majority of the players, and I thought that was a fun question, and I thought about why that is. And I think a lot of times I'd rather take the fun move or the move that is that just seems the coolest, regardless of how many points the designer of the game decides to assign it. That's what I look for a lot in board games. Yeah, I enjoy the competition too, but sometimes I want to take the fun route, make the game a little more enjoyable, and do that fun, silly move that doesn't get you all the points, just for the conversation's sake. Tim, how'd you answer this one?
Yeah, so I said same as other players. And I think in reality, I think you guys probably are too, if we actually recorded every play. And Chris, I think you do record plays and wins. So I'd be curious if you actually have statistics on this. But I think you guys are remembering the losses more, because I think we're a pretty competitive group. Usually when we get together to play a 4-player game, and especially if it's a game that we've all played before, I think I could pretty much say it's a crapshoot. It's like everybody's going to be pretty competitive. And if you don't win, you're probably going to be right up there within a few points of everybody else. And I think that's kind of how this whole weekend played out. Like, even though I lost every game, I had a lot of seconds and thirds, and I was in almost every game. I think there were very few games where we had one person way in the back. I don't think there was a single one like that. Even if we had one big winner, there generally was a few people that were very close, and it could have been within a couple points of each other on almost every game that was there this weekend. So I think you guys are probably about the same as other players, but I don't record stats on it. I think, with my local group, like my wife and our friend Jen, I tend to win more, but it's probably because I'm more enthusiastic about games and I've played them more. And they're kind of there just because I want to play games, and they like, doing that activity. Although if you get to like Jen, who her favorite game is the Castles of Burgundy, when we play that now, she's very competitive. In fact, I'd say she's starting to beat me more than I win at that game, even though I play a lot more games in general. So, and I'm suspecting why 22% said most of the time they win is because people who are following a board game podcast may be the more excited board gamer, maybe in their relationship where they play most of their games. And I think that's probably a good reason why that happens. Now, because we have a long conversation to go tonight, I'm not going to read any comments off Twitter, but please go check them out on BG_hot takes on Twitter. And you can find this poll, lots of interesting answers. But I did think it was funny how a lot of people talked both about how they're more likely to win because they're the ones teaching the games and bringing the games, but also many people who said they're more likely to lose because they're the ones teaching the games. And so they're distracted with that process. And I think that happens to me a lot. I think if I know a game well, but I'm teaching it for the first time, I'm so busy watching everybody else's plays and making sure they're not making mistakes and making sure that they kind of are not missing important strategy tips that I don't pay a lot of attention to my own. So because of that, my favorite way to play a game is with a few seasoned gamers who already know the game, or even, just the casual gamers who know a game already, and they can just kind of do their thing and I can do my thing. Anyway, yeah, I'd say we're all pretty average.
So interestingly, I do actually have some data on this. I looked at my app here and I tracked my games. I do. And so I'm not exactly sure how these statistics work on here. So I go to an individual player and it gives me a win percentage. So I think this will accurately tell me what you guys' win percentage is against me, but I don't think my win percentage is accurate because that's going to be against everybody that I play, which includes people that don't play games a whole lot. But at least between the two of you, I see Adam with a win percentage of 29%, which surprised me, and Tim with a win percentage of 49%.
Wow.
And that surprised me too. And then my win percentage overall was 38%, which I think is not an accurate number for anything, but there you go. There's at least a little bit of data.
So I win 49% of the games that I played with you, Chris, but I won 0% of the games that I played with you this weekend. Adam, tell us why that is.
So one of my theories is that a lot of the times we're playing games for the first time. And I think you are the one who brings most of those to the table, or you're the ones who says, I'm going to learn the rules. I'm going to teach it all to you guys. You are more familiar with the games by the time we get to them online or wherever we're playing them. I know a lot of times I'm still like catching up, and like it's a much more of a learning game for me on a lot of these first plays. I think even if I were to be the guy that learned the rule book and then taught it to you guys, I would still feel like, oh, this is just a learning game for me, and I'm going to explore some of the mechanisms of the game and just kind of see what's out there in the game. And I think you, Tim, I think another thing is you're like, the competitive juices get flowing. You want to solve that puzzle. Your drive to solve that puzzle in the most efficient way is a lot higher than mine. I think maybe I'm just not motivated. I'm just like, let's see what this game can do. And if I win, that's just a side product. So I think, those are some of the differences in our brain. I don't know if that necessarily correlates to win percentage, just some of the theories cooking around in my brain for why you kind of struggle at a lot of these cons.
Well, the second one ties into one of my theories, but the first one, so Adam, are you just saying that I have learned the games first, or that I am just smarter at picking up new games first?
I think a little bit of both. So I genuinely think so. So yeah, you get familiar with the rulebook, and I think you can go from rulebook to translating that into points a lot better than I can, for sure. And I don't know if that's how it works or not.
But so the second point, you said, maybe generally I'm more competitive than you. And I don't necessarily agree with that. I think Chris is probably the most competitive of all of us. But
you might be right, yeah.
But do you get, Adam, did you get more competitive at these cons because there's a trophy on the line? Do you feel like you sit there and try harder? Is that maybe one of the reasons why you guys are winning more at these, because you're actually putting more effort into min-maxing and making sure that you have a better shot at winning?
I feel like I can focus more when it's there at the table. I can bring in that big picture a lot more than on Tabletop Simulator. I can look over at Steve's resources and be like, oh, next move, he can't go here. I don't have to worry about going there this move. There's just little edge cases where I'm a little more in tune, and I'm going to get lazy on TTS or Board Game Arena. I don't want to Alt tab or this guy's player board, or look at this, translate these little teeny icons up in the top right of the screen and figure out who can go where at what time. I think it's a lot easier for me to get into the game when it's there on the table and the players are right next to me. I can kind of feel it out a lot more. Definitely, I think I'm more focused at these cons.
I'm with Adam on that one. I think that makes a lot of sense.
Chris, do you feel like you get more competitive though? Because I think you might a little bit. Like when there's something on the line, you used to be driven a lot. We used to do a league scoring where even in our regular game nights, we would sit there and record it. But Chris, I always felt like you always played harder and gave more effort when there's a league scoring on the line versus just a single night win. Do you feel that way, or do you think that you kind of play the same level?
I probably do that a little bit. Yeah, I mean, for sure. I mean, like Adam said, a lot of times we're playing a BGA game and I'll be like, man, if I got to scroll one more time, or if I got to, I can't be hovering over everything to find out the little tooltip that tells me what this stupid little icon does. And so I'll make lazy moves, but I'm not going to do that when I'm playing in a tournament. Then I feel a little bit more serious about it. And like Adam said, when we're playing tournament games, we're playing live. And I don't have to hover over any icons to see what Steve's doing or you're doing or Adam's doing when we're playing live. And so that to me makes all the difference in the world, I think. So I think Adam's onto something there. But I think what you're saying is also kind of true, that I do tend to be a little bit more competitive when we're playing for something.
One of the interesting things is for the weekend, that even though we're talking about me having a 0 win rate for the whole weekend when we were scoring, before Chris got there, Adam and Steve and I played 5 games together. And we'll talk about those briefly here tonight, even though Chris wasn't a part of them. And I won 3 of them. The first 3 games for the weekend, I actually won. So sitting there being in person, I guess I played just as well there. Now, I have 2 different theories here. Number one was, statistically, it's not probable that I should win any less than you guys. I think we're all kind of at the same level. And with most of these games, small moves will get you the win in some cases. And again, the overall scores kind of spelled that out. Like most of the time we were within a few points of each other. So maybe it's just improbable, but possible that I just kind of hit the wrong end of all of those probabilities this weekend. But the second thing I was thinking of is that I was watching some things you guys were doing this weekend. And I was thinking back on the weekend, because I did have a 7-hour drive home yesterday and a lot of time to think about my failure. And one of the things I was thinking about looking back on the games was the amount of time I spent on my turns versus what you guys were doing on your turns. And this is not a criticism at all, because I enjoyed the time sitting there with you guys while you were thinking through your turns. But I think on most turns, I would just take a turn quickly. And I noticed there were times where Adam and Steve, I saw Steve do this a lot. I saw Chris do this a lot. All of you guys, I saw you guys go, okay, I'm going to do this. Oh, wait, this would be more points over here. So you were like literally calculating out what the value was of the move you were doing. And I think this is kind of just a more recent evolution of my own play, is that I tend to play a little bit more by gut. Like, that seems like a fun move. That seems like a big move. I'm going to do it, but I don't calculate it out. And I saw Adam do this. We were playing Eclipse, and we'll get to this, but he literally knew what the end game scores were minus those little hidden tokens in the 7th round. I'm just not calculating to that level. And I think you guys, because of the tournament, I think you guys were putting more effort in than you normally do. And I don't think I really was. I think I was sitting there playing the game I normally do, which is kind of like, hey, I've got a strategy. I'm going to play to my gut and I'm going to do what I think feels right. But I know that I'm not like calculating out this move is going to be worth 10 points. This move is going to be worth 3 points. And part of that might be driven by when I play with my wife, she gets really frustrated if I take a while on my turn. She doesn't want to sit there at the table waiting for someone else to take her turn. And so I tend to move through stuff really quickly. And she's my most frequent, playing partner. And so I think I've kind of gotten in the habit of like, I'm just going to rush through my turn. And that's okay. I like playing that way and I'm having fun with it. But I'm just kind of wondering if you guys were a little more focused and spending more time calculating for the tournament sake. But you don't think so maybe not.
Well, note to self, that gut play thing, it's not working out.
Oh, nice, Chris. I guilty as charged for some games, Tim. Eclipse. That's one if we get out, I want to win that one. Like, there's no doubt about it. I can pretend I don't want to win as much as I want to. And I'll try to be a nice guy while we're playing, friendly, smile. But in the inside, oh my gosh, I want to win that game so bad. Okay, but I want to be principled about it too. We were playing Terraforming Mars, and I feel like I have the most plays out of everyone when we play a game. I think I have the edge every time. But I don't want to win if it's because of me noticing stuff better than other people notice stuff. So and I think I'm making more of a note of that too. Like, that's a big issue for me in some games. I don't want the game to be about who can remember the most bonuses that they're supposed to get without forgetting. That brings up a whole nother subject of which games might be better on BGA, where it does all of that combo getting and it gives you the options of what you can take. You don't have to think about like, I'm eligible for this milestone. That's like the best points in the game in Terraforming Mars. So anyway, more points there about BGA versus real life and winning and not winning and caring and not caring.
Yeah, and I appreciate that. And I love that. And that's the way I play as well. And I think like playing a game like Terraforming Mars that we've all played 50 times, or Blood Rage that we played 50 times, it's nice that you're doing that, but I don't think you need to do that. I think part of the game of playing better is paying attention. But like, say I felt the same way playing Tapestry. Like, I felt it was my responsibility sitting next to you that night, because I know me and Chris and Steve have played a ton, and you've played like half a dozen times, but you once a year maybe. And so I felt it was like my responsibility to just make sure, okay, Adam, did you catch this thing? Oh, Adam, this is a good strategy. But when we got to the games where it was like all out, like we've all played a ton, and it was, like every man for themselves, you guys will just have to pay attention. Not that I wouldn't have helped you if I saw something really obvious, but I do kind of think that that's part of these games is not just about remembering what's there, but also, continuing to pursue the strategies and thinking about the different options available.
Interesting.
Well, that's enough psychology, y'all. Let's get to the games.
All right. Sounds good. So again, as I mentioned, I drove out on Thursday afternoon, and Steve was supposed to be flying into the Long Beach airport at about 4:30. So I got there about 3, checked into our Airbnb. When I was almost there, Steve texted and he's like, my flight got delayed. I'm not going to be until 9:30 tonight. So I was going to pick Steve up from the airport, pick Adam up from his house, which is close to the airport, and we were all going to go down to the beach, play a couple of games, get dinner.
One thing I want to jump in here and say is thank you guys so much for coming down to Long Beach, making it much easier on me to be able to get to the convention with all I have going on. I know you guys have other things you love about Long Beach, but I appreciated it. Thank you guys so much for making it down.
You're welcome. You're welcome.
Absolutely.
Yeah, Adam's the only one with a toddler of the group here, so it was a little easier for you to be close to home. So no worries about that at all. So anyway, I was supposed to pick up Adam, and when we found out Steve wasn't coming, he's like, "Hey, do you want to stop by and say hi to Sarah and see my kids?" And I was like, "Hey, tell Sarah, see if Sarah wants to play Dune Imperium, because the three of us have played a decent amount on Tabletop Simulator over the years, but I'd never met Sarah in person." And he texted me back. He's like, "Absolutely, we'll get the nanny a little bit extended. We'll get it set up." So I was really excited about that. So I got to Adam's house about 3:30, and we jumped into a game of Dune Imperium. And luckily for me, I was so happy that you had the Rise of Ix expansion there, because I know you've been a little bit down on it. So how'd this play of Dune Imperium with the Rise of Ix expansion go?
Yeah, so I've been a little leery of the expansion. Is it just bloat? Is it just more stuff that I don't have to focus on? The base game's already so tight. But this game, the expansion opened up for me, and I started to see these new interesting connections between that tech track and the shipping track, and how those tie into some of the new cards in the game. And the board opened up for me in different strategy. It was a blast. I had so much fun playing this expansion, and I'm glad I got to that point where the expansion really turned a corner for me here. And now, again, it feels like one of those I want to play with this every time, just because it's so much fun and so much more dynamic than the base game.
Nice. Yeah, I loved it again. I And it was the one game where like we got to the second day, I think, and it was my pick for another game, and I almost pulled it out again. Like this was almost the only pick that we duplicated over the weekend. Had a great time playing with Sarah. Sarah's super smart and competitive, and she's crushed me a lot of times in Dune Imperium in the past. But I just managed to pull off the win on this one. Adam was like right at the top, and Sarah was about halfway down the track going into the last round. Adam was like just a little bit above me or really close. And he was going to pull out the win, the last combat. Sarah managed to get several points in the last couple rounds, I think moving up a couple tech tracks. So she was right there with us. So I think the game ended. I finally pulled off the last conflict, if I remember. Was that what happened? I think that's what happened.
There was so much going on. I can't remember. I know you took the Bene Gesserit alliance.
Oh, that's what it was. Yeah.
I think I might have won that last combat. I was like, I got it. But you switched the Bene Gesserit right before that. So I got my 2 points, but it wasn't enough to break to 10, and you swept in there. But at that game you talked about, Sarah, she found her 6 spice, 2 water every round again with this card. She's like, she recognized this card and she's like, oh, that's the same strategy I love. And no, boom. And she was doing it even quicker this time. So she won like, I don't know, half the battles in this game too. Yeah. And then we had so many battle ties too. There was such a fun game. A totally unique play than any other plays of Dune Imperium. What a great game.
Of all the games we had there this weekend, I think this is the one that I most regret that we didn't get to during the actual con.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. I would have loved another play of that with the 4 of us. A couple other notes about the Ix expansion. Two highlights. Number one is that Adam had both his dreadnoughts out by, I think, like the 3rd round. So he had a quick move on it. And I think the only conflict he won the entire game was that last one. He just like there were other ways. Like he always had these 2 dreadnoughts out there, this huge force, and somebody was either winning with like reveal cards or they were winning with other stuff that they managed to pull off, intrigue cards or whatever. So it was really surprising but fun. And like you said, a lot of ties. We almost got no points from the combat. That's why the game went a little long because we kept tying and getting those second place rewards. The second thing that was really exciting to me was, as Adam mentioned, that Sarah pulled off this card that like every time you go to a spice mining space, you get to double the amount of spice you get from it. So her favorite strategy when we used to play the base game would be to like go get some water and then go pick up 5 spice or 6 spice and then go to the Spacing Guild,
the Highliner spot,
a bunch of troops and more water. And she'd always, even though we always knew she was going to go after it, she'd always manage to prioritize it and kill us with it. And this time she gets this card, starts playing it every other turn, picking up a ton of spice, going to the Spacing Guild. It was awesome. We also had a couple fun plays where at like one point I pulled off Adam and I both had a voice, and I put the voice down and blocked the Spacing Guild thing, the Highliner space. And then Adam plays a voice the next turn and blocks me out of it. So I didn't get to use it. He ends up pulling it off and using it and still tied in that battle. What a cool game.
Yep. So many fun rounds, so many wacky things happening. Then that just ties in thematically the more and more I play it as well, which is super fun.
All right. So the next game we got to play, now Steve still wasn't there yet, but Adam and I went back to the VRBO and decided to have some dinner right down the street there. And after dinner, we got one more game of Radlands in. So this is a 2-player only game. I was worried we weren't going to get this played because our good friend of the show, Leanne, who is Board Game Chatterbox on Twitter, she was really adamant that we play this because for a while I'd been saying I'm really not that interested. Adam picked it up because she had convinced him that it was a great game. He was liking it. And I was like, okay, finally, I'll get it in. But because it ended up being the 2 of us for a little bit, we got a chance to play Radlands. And this was my first play of it. Adam, how'd that go for you?
Well, I'm interested to hear your take. For me, I had a lot of fun. I'm glad it seemed like you were getting into it. The one thing that was kind of surprising was it seemed to go long. I hadn't had a game this long of Radlands. Usually it's like battle, 5 or 6 turns in, bases are destroyed, game over, reset it up. So that was my one kind of difference from playing it previously.
How long did the game go?
It's probably an hour play, something like that. Would you say?
Yeah, hour plus, I think, for sure.
Wow.
Yeah, we played most of it. We had to go pick Steve up from the airport, but it did feel like it already been going like 45 minutes, and then we came back and we finished off within a couple turns. Did you think it went slow, Adam, because I was taking my time looking at the cards? Do you feel like we just had more back and forth where nobody was making any real progress?
I feel like it was a lot more back and forth. A lot of times when I play this with Sarah, one of us will get one of these leads right away, this right combo of cards that just spikes it up, and then there's
game's over.
Yeah, game's over. Base count, base. So yeah, here I think there was just a lot more back and forth. Maybe we were both playing the defensive strategy. Well, I don't want to give him the edge here. Instead of taking the riskier, like I'm going to play this big, huge guy and try to get. So who knows? Just maybe a different style of play. But yeah, ours was a lot up and down neutral and no peaks and valleys like I've experienced before.
Yeah. Well, I really like this game. This is a card, kind of a little card battler. And there's a couple of things that were pretty cool about it. First, both players from a deck, well, I think you get like 6 cards to start with and you get to keep 3, or you get 5 and get to keep 3 or something like that. But these are your bases. And I don't know if all the bases are unique, but they seemed like a good variety. And these bases are kind of the end game goals. You have 3 bases, 1 in each column at the bottom of your board. And if you lose all 3 of your bases, you lose the game. So the goal is to basically send out these cards into your tableau that will allow you to do damage to bases. But the hook is that if you put a character in front of your base, the opponent usually can't attack the base directly. They would do damage to the character first. And if a character gets damaged, they get tapped sideways. They can't be used anymore. If they get damaged the second time, they die. And the same thing happens with the bases. The bases all have unique abilities on them. If they get damaged, then they get kind of tapped sideways. And if they get damaged the second time, they get flipped over and they're destroyed. So the variety in the bases was fun. So you already had some starting abilities. The variety in the deck was fun. These cards usually, there's a resource water, and that's kind of your action points in the turn. And so typically you would get 3 action points to spend, and cards would cost different amounts to either play or activate. But you could also, cards were very limited. So it's hard to get cards. I think you get 1 every round, and then you get your 3 water back. So cards, you could buy extra cards with some abilities, but that was expensive to do and it was hard to do. So a lot of it was like drawing off the deck. Is this a card I can use? No, I'll pay 2 resources to get another card. I hope that's a card I can use. So there's definitely a decent amount of luck in it, but I did think there were some fun strategic choices to make with it. I could see you saying it went a little long. I felt like I was taking a long time on my turn because I was kind of grappling with the decisions to make. But I thought they were fun decisions. I would love to play it again. I thought this was a really fun 2-player game.
That whole weekend, I never got a chance to play that one either. You guys did all the good stuff before I got there.
Well, Chris, speaking of good stuff before you got there, I got a few more to cover. So our next game that we played that night, so we picked Steve up from the airport. And when we knew Chris wasn't going to make it till the next morning, I kind of, sent Chris the list of games I was bringing. And I said, Chris, what don't you want to play at all? Because we'll try to get something knocked out that you aren't interested in playing. And one of the games he mentioned was Champions of Midgard. Now, Chris and I had played this game a lot many years back when we first started gaming together. So, Chris, maybe you can talk a little bit about why you didn't want to. But Adam had never played it, and I just hadn't got my copy played for a couple of year and a half or something like that. And I was just excited to play it. So I brought the whole thing. I have all the upgrades of player mat, and I thought this is a great time just to get a kind of a fun, quick little thematic Euro in that Chris doesn't want to play anyway. So we played a 3-player game. This included the Dark Mountains and Valhalla expansions on it. And I think this was Adam's first play. So Chris, first of all, why not interested in Champions of Midgard?
I have nothing against Champions of Midgard. 2 of the similar games that we played way back in the day, Champions of Midgard and what's the other one that I'm forgetting? Yeah, Lords of Waterdeep. Between the 2, Lords of Waterdeep, I would say too bland, not that interesting. I wouldn't want to play it because of that. Champions of Midgard, I think, is actually a really fun game with some really cool stuff and some real excitement, especially when you're launching your ships off to fight monsters and that sort of thing. But compared to the other games that we had that weekend, that was the one that to me just felt the most like, meh, I don't need to play that. So I would have played it, and I probably would have had a fun time playing it if we had played it. But with all those other options, I don't need Champions of Midgard.
You know what was cool here, Tim, about this one? This was my first play. The dice management. I loved that. That was so much cooler than I thought it would be. You can every round you're going to lose some dice, and then you can trade those in to get these little chits, and you can draft new dice the next round. Or is that the exact mechanic? How does that work? It's nice.
Yeah, basically your dice are warriors, and so when you go to battles, this is all a worker placement game, and so you can either go to spaces to pick up dice, but you can also go to other spaces that are going to initiate a combat at the end of the round. And when you go to combat, you just roll some dice, and they have hits or misses on them, and then the monsters have hits on them. So if the monsters hit you, you have to throw away one of those dice. With the Valhalla expansion, you get these little tokens that the dice represents, but they can be turned in for upgraded abilities and other dice and stuff like that.
That was just so incredibly fun to me. It was, you kind of, okay, which dice am I willing to have sacrifices turned? And you get to turn that into buy stuff. That's pretty fun. So I really enjoyed that aspect of the game on the first play. I thought it was fantastic. And this is the one that's nearest and dearest to your hearts, right, Tim?
It's been a while since I played it, but I've had it a long time. I did a lot of upgrading on it early. I've been tempted to get rid of it, but it's up on alpha on Board Game Arena right now. And so I got a couple invites from people to play. And I've been having so much fun with it. So I was like, I want to get the physical copy out again. And it didn't disappoint. I think I actually liked it more than I remembered. I think I kind of got stale because I played it a lot early and then I was exploring new games. But after this play this weekend, I think I'm going to keep it. I think this is a game I wouldn't mind getting out once a year, a couple times a year, and just busting out a fun little Euro.
How great was it to watch Steve try to sail down and get whatever with those boats? I don't know what was going on in there, but he'd roll and he'd fail every single time, and everybody on his boat would perish. He'd get so mad. Oh man, that was great.
Oh, it was hilarious too, because every time we'd go up to the Burgosaur spaces, which is from the Dark Mountains expansion, or go on the boats, Adam and I would always flip over the card without any previous knowledge, and it would always be an all clear. We'd never get hit. Steve would go, he'd prep, he'd go to the hut, he'd know it was going to attack him, and it was always bad stuff. He was always losing stuff every time.
Every single time. It was hilarious.
Yeah, Steve must have loved that.
I think that's one of the criticisms of this game generally, is that there is a decent amount of luck in it for what is otherwise a resource management game. But I think it's the right level of luck to me. Like it's like there's risk mitigation, and there's some challenges. One of the things that I used to complain about with the game, two things. One was there's a set collection, an end game scoring thing of set collection, about how you have to get a red, blue, and yellow monster. You'll get 5 for every set of those you get. And I think it used to bug me because I was so focused on other stuff. And then we get to the end of the game and it always felt to me like it was like randomly someone would get 10 or 15 points because they had these sets. But tonight I went into it and I was like, you know what, I'm just going to actually like pay attention to that. And I taught it and made sure you guys understood that. And it was fun for me to kind of like pursue, like, whoa, wait, I'm going to go to this monster because that's the red one I need to complete the set I've got. And then I picked up one of the big epic monsters that doubled my yellow. So I knew I could just add more reds and blues and not have to add more yellow. So it was a fun puzzle. And so that was cool. The other thing that used to bother me about it was how like you could get momentum. Someone would get ahead and it's hard to catch up because everyone's kind of getting a little bit of points every turn. But the funny thing about this game was that like Adam was ahead the whole game. By the end of the game, I think he was like 20 points up. He'd done really well. He was consistently picking up lots of dice. He had like 8 warriors on his ship by the end of the game. And we thought for sure he had it in the bag, except he'd never been going to fight the trolls. And Steve and I were kind of trading them, and we'd drop one on Adam's lap. But over time, Steve and I were, getting rid of ours. And as Adam looked like he was going to just, tear away with the victory, Steve started going to the trolls and throwing his blame tokens over at Adam, which give you negative points at the end of the game. So Adam ends up getting like negative 21 points for the blame tokens. I got, I think, a positive 20 points from the set collection, and I managed to just pull off a win with it by just a few points. So it was a big, exciting moment at the end, and we didn't expect it.
Yeah, that was my one criticism of the game. I don't want to mess with having to go to this place to clean up negative points. That's like the Yui Rosenberg favorite mechanism. Yeah, that's like I don't want to have to like clean up this mess part that I didn't have anything to do with. I just got because other people did. So that was kind of frustrating to me. Definitely did not enjoy that part of the game. So I just ignored it and I paid the price.
It's thematic because the local villagers blame you for letting the trolls get into the village where we're heroes and we get to send the blame your way.
These villagers got to learn how to take care of themselves. I can't take care of their whole lives. Teach a village to fish, That's right. All right. And then the last game that happened after that, so it was pretty late, but we were all kind of wound up and ready to game some more. And Adam had brought a little card game that he's talked about before called Ghosts of Christmas. Now I know it's not in season, but it's a little trick-taking game, and I was really excited to try this. And I love it. I love it. So this is a very standard trick-taking game with a little bidding mechanism. Basically, if you don't know what a trick-taking game is, everybody starts with a hand of cards. You just basically deal the whole deck out to all 3 people. So you got all these different cards of different suits. I think it's 4 different suits in this one. And so basically what's going to happen on every turn is you're going to play a card, and everybody's going to play a card around in a circle. And whoever plays the card first sets the trump suit, the winning suit. And then whoever ends up playing the highest card in that suit is going to take the trick. So that's what a trick taking means. And then in some trick taking games, you have to bid. You look at your hand, and then you have to bid at the beginning how many tricks you think you're going to win that round. And there were 2 things that were really clever. So that's basic trick taking. And that's really most of what the mechanisms were here. 2 really clever things that I loved about this. First of all, it was beautiful, great theme, great production, representing the old Dickens story. And so you had, different characters from Dickens' story were on these cards. And it was just really cute. The way that this one plays is that instead of just bidding on one trick every round, you're bidding in the past, the present, and the future. And so when you play a card down, you're going to play it in the past row, the present row, or the future row, but you don't know where the other players are going to play. So you're kind of setting up
each of those tricks. And then you're going to end up in a 3-player game, you'd have 9 cards out on the table before the trick ended, 3 in each of those rows. And then whoever won the trick in each era would get to pick those cards up. It was a fun challenge. And so you could kind of like, oh, I think that everyone else has a red card, so I'm going to play this so that I'm going to get the highest card here. And then it'll turn out that somebody else doesn't have the red card and they end up with the trump suit and can take it away from you because they were able to burn it in a different era or something like that. Lots of little tricks you could play. It was challenging in my brain at first. Like I was like, oh man, I'll never get this. But by the second round, it was starting to come in really fun. The other cool thing about it though, is that you are bidding on your hands, as I mentioned, and they do this with a little mechanism where it's like they've got these little door tokens. And so the bid you're going to take is represented by these doors, but you can either make an exact bid or you can make a bid that is potentially 1 over, and that's represented by a different color door. So I could either say, I'm going to win 4 tricks, or I could say, I'm going to win 4 or 5 tricks. But if I win 4 tricks, I get 4 points, or it's double the points, right? I'd win 8 points. If I did the option that was a little bit safer and said I'm going to win 4 or 5 tricks, I'd only get the exact number. So I'd only get 4 or 5 points if I won that hand. But in either case, if you don't meet your bids, you're going to lose all the points. So it's riskier to bid exactly, but you've got a potentially big reward for it. And then you play to like, I don't remember, 20 points or something like that. It's a pretty, you're going to end up playing like a few hands to get to this. I love this game, Adam. I think it's fantastic. I'm going to pick it up as my seasonal game. Super fun game. I think, it's a little heavier than typical trick taking just because of the different eras, but beyond that, it's super easy. So I think I could teach this to almost anybody. How'd this go for you?
I'm glad you guys like this one. Steve seemed like he was into it. You seemed like you're into it and catching on. Yeah, that first round is a little tricky to explain, put into words, but you play that first round, you explain how the change of trump is going to work as the tricks are resolved in the past, and then it starts to click a little bit, and then you can kind of see all these different little twists and turns the game's going to take. Such a fun game. I'm glad you guys liked it.
Chris, does it sound interesting to you at all? I know you don't like trick takers generally.
That's tough because it doesn't sound that interesting to me, but that doesn't mean I wouldn't like it. Often with games like that, it actually takes playing it for me to really get a sense of it. I guess my imagination just isn't that good.
Yeah, fair enough. So the next morning we knew we had one more game to play before Chris got there. And I recommended a couple things, but Steve picked Star Wars Outer Rim, which is a game that I've talked about a little bit recently. And although I wanted Chris to experience it, I think I was afraid it was going to play too long at 4 players for the experience you get out of it. And so I thought this would be a great one to get in with 3 players. We started playing it and Steve was immediately like, this is my favorite game of the whole weekend. But the game, I've explained it recently, but it's basically like you're traveling out. It's a pick up and delivery game, but there's a lot of story in it. Like every turn, you're going to end up doing an event where you turn over a card and you read a little story and you're having an encounter with a bounty hunter, with a galactic cruiser or whatever. You're meeting these characters from the Star Wars world. So it's a little bit of a storytelling game with a competitive role to it. I have 2 really quick comments on it. Number one is I do think it would be way too long at 4 players because I think it went too long at 3 players. And we ended up, you can play to 10 points, but they recommend you start with 8 points. So we played to 8 points and it still felt like it dragged a little bit. So I think I would choose to play this 2-player or solo. I think this is a really fun solo game. But I think it'd be great at 2 players as well. It'd probably go quick enough. But I think 3 or 4, it goes a little bit too long. Yeah, that was probably my only new comment on it. Other than that, I thought it was a fun game.
I had a lot of fun with this one too. Tim, you guys, I was a little worried at first. I heard it could go a little long. And yeah, it did go a little long. But I think playing to 8 shortened it up to almost a perfect length. This game gave me a lot of memories of Firefly, which is a game I used to play with my mom. It's a big old game. You can get stuck on space. You go to this planet and you can draw these certain type of cards. You can upgrade your ship, get these different little missions. So a very sandboxy feel here, kind of do what you want and go where you want. And I had a lot more fun than I thought I was going to. So again, thanks for introducing this one to me as well.
Between this and Rebellion, it seems like there's a pattern that Star Wars games tend to go really long.
Yeah.
You missed the pattern, though. It's Fantasy Flight games tend to go really long. Because, and the thing about their company is like, I don't have anything against what they're doing because what they're really trying to do, what their whole focus is driving a thematic experience. It's a storytelling experience in a game. I've been talking about Arkham Horror LCG lately. It's similar and they do a great job with that. But to do that, they're giving you all the fiddly mechanisms and the story, reading story bits and all of that stuff that are going to slow a game down and take away some of the streamlined play that you would hope for from a lot of games. So it's a trade-off, and that's what you get here. All right, so Chris finally got here. So Chris got first pick of the weekend. Tell us about your pick, Chris.
So my first game was Ark Nova. And this was, I knew, kind of a mixed choice because I know Tim loves it. I know that Steve and Adam were not completely taken with it from the review that you guys did, which I actually wasn't on. That was an episode that I didn't participate in for one reason or another. And so I remember listening to it going, wow, what an interesting thing that these guys are so lukewarm about the game. And Tim is so all in on Ark Nova. And then I tried it and Tim convinced me too. I mean, the game convinced me. Tim convinced me to try it. And then the game convinced me that it was good. So I knew that this was going to be an interesting choice from the perspective of seeing how everybody else reacted. And everybody was perfectly good sports about it. And Adam's giving me a funny look.
Yeah, Chris, I think from the review, I think this one went down for me. And I think it went down for Steve too. We weren't so high on it at all. And a lot of it was all these fiddly mechanisms. I talked about it earlier too. This game is a lot about, are you going to remember to get the bonuses that you're supposed to remember to get? So that remembering aspect, along with all these different icons on the cards that I wasn't sure which ones were the requirements, which ones were the tags he gave me. What is this other special thing? There was this little ×2 marker that came out one time and some other weird edgy little case that I didn't even know existed in this game. So a bunch of funky stuff happened in this game. It made it longer and longer, and it kept going and going and going. So I was having a rough time by the end of this one.
I think that's a very fair criticism. There is a lot of fiddliness with this. And there's definitely some things that I feel like probably could have been developed out of this game. And those ×2 markers. I think there's a Venom token in there that we had.
Yeah, that's the one.
Yeah, I will confess that some of that stuff got to me too. I think there was one thing, and it might have been the Venom token, that we went through the book in great detail, and it never really explained what that thing was supposed to do, or it didn't explain it in a way that we could interpret. But overall, I still had a really good time playing this game. It ended up going super long, which was unfortunate, especially for a game that not everybody was loving. But there's so many good things happening in here, and the charming cards and the animals and the thematic nature of the game, that I still thought it was really fun. For me, this game, I really doubled down on the engine building piece, which is always fun. And so that was a great opportunity to do that by buying all of these. I forget which cards they're the sponsorship cards, the ones where they add something to your tableau that allows you to take an action or get a benefit when something happens. And so I must have had 6 or 7 of these sponsor cards out there. And so every turn something would happen and I would get some benefit, which on the one hand is super fun. On the other hand, means a lot of things you got to remember to do. So I think by the end of the game, I probably missed, 7, 8 dozen different opportunities to get some benefit that I just forgot to get. And then 2 turns later, I'm like, oops, crap, I forgot that. Can't go back and redo it now. But overall, a really fun game and a really enjoyable play for me.
Yeah, I would say this play dropped Ark Nova a little bit for me as well, but it's situational. The reason I think it suffered is because it went too long. And so this is a 4-player issue. And I think 2 players, it's brisk, and 3 players would probably be a fun experience. I don't think there's too much going on. I think the stuff that's going on is fantastic. But like you mentioned, some of those little edge cases, like the little chits, they could have just removed that completely. There's 5 of them. They even tell you can play without them if you want to play more friendly, and there's alternate things written on the cards. So just why did you leave? Why, you just gave us a punch board full of cardboard that comes up every other game. So I agree, that piece, develop it down. The rest of it, I love the weight of it. I love all the decisions you get to make. This game also was the first time that I personally suffered a lot from what I think some people complain about, and that is the luck of the draw. Now, I know the game gives you a lot of opportunities to draw through your deck and draw into strategies, and I might have just missed them this time. I admit that. I felt like the changing card row in the middle, and because the fact was going long and I was trying to speed things up, I didn't want to spend time reading those cards to see if I could snap a card up that would improve my strategy. And so I was doing a lot of filtering for cards, and I just wasn't getting things that fit together. And that's okay. I still had a fun time playing it. I had a fun time building my zoo, but it wasn't a very successful zoo. And that, clearly spells out that, that's going to be a struggle for people who really don't like luck in their game. So I think this is still a game I love, but I want to play it at 2 or 3 players, and I'm good with that.
And the winner of Ark Nova was... Go ahead, say it.
This is okay. So this is the first scoring game of the weekend. And in case I didn't mention this at the top of the episode, we, at these little cons that we do, we bring a trophy. This is the 3rd official BGHT con, and there is an actual trophy that you can win for having the most wins. We keep the scoring real simple. If you win a game, you get 1 point. If you don't win a game, you get 0 points. And so this was the first official game, and Chris took it away with his pick. So congrats, Chris, on your great start to the weekend.
Thank you, Tim.
So by this point, as we mentioned, it was a long game, and we had a longer lunch, so started about 12:30 or 1, but didn't finish this until like 5. So it was like, it's dinner time. Let's go get some dinner. We went downtown. We were in this beautiful area of Long Beach, California. It's called Belmont Shore. It has a ton of walkable restaurants. So we never got in a car the whole weekend. Great restaurants to go to. Went down, had a nice dinner, but we got back probably at, 7 or 8 or something like that. And everybody was excited to play Barrage. This is our recent big hit with the group. We've been playing it a ton. And based on one of our listeners' recommendations, I think it was Josh Drake, who suggested that you have to play with the Leeghwater expansion. It fixes the game. The weird thing is that none of us thought it was broken. We all love this game. We all loved it as it was, but we listened to Josh and we added the Leeghwater expansion to Barrage. So Adam, you picked Barrage this time. What do you think?
I still had a blast playing this one. We got out the Leeghwater expansion and I was like head scratching. When would you do this? When would you do this? What I love most about Barrage is that central board and building up your buildings, trying to control the flow of the water. And that's what the core of the game is all about. And then you have the Leeghwater expansion, which it gives you other stuff to do without having to do anything with the main board. And to me, that takes away a little bit. I want to focus on that main board and try to control the water and do what I can within that system. I know it gets tight. I know it can be brutal, but I like that part of the game. And that's the fun for me. So taking that away, it brought it down a little bit. Also want to add, quick plug in here, that we added the water droplets from a game called Planted, which I talked about on the show. But I think adding those fat, juicy water droplets really added a lot to the table presence here.
So I agree with Adam for once that the Leeghwater expansion was not a positive in this case. Now, it was a first play, obviously. And like I said, at least at this number of plays, I haven't been feeling there's any problems here. The 4-player experience gets a little tight. I agree with that. And I think that's what Josh was trying to indicate, is that if you're playing at 4 players, this kind of gives you some other options to go after. And it did. And maybe if you explored a little bit more, it'd be fun. It basically gives you this other type of building you can build, but the building goes off to the sideboard with some variable setup buildings you can build, and they each give you a different ongoing ability. And then every time you use them, they get more expensive. So if multiple people build that, then you're kind of racing against each other for this thing. Now, I decided to play with this on the first round of the game, and I built one of these buildings, but they're pretty expensive. And what that did is it stopped me from being able to build anything else for the next 2 rounds. So I kind of focused on that building, and I think I maybe built one component out on the main board by the end of the game. So I was kind of not playing the same game that everybody else was playing. I built this one board. I was, finding some other ways to collect points. I built a couple other buildings on the side, and I came in either a second or a very competitive 3rd place on it. And I don't think I ever gained energy from generating water through the main board. And that was kind of disappointing. It kind of took away what really does make the fun of Barrage. Now, on our first review of it, I complained about how I don't like people messing with my strategies on the game, and that, it was frustrating to have stuff ruined. But as I've learned the game and played it more, I really like the puzzle there. I like planning around where people could disrupt you and taking the risk or mitigating the risk when you want to. So I feel like I missed out on a fun game of Barrage because of the expansion and because of the choice I made, even though I played a competitive game with it. So I guess if you played a lot of Barrage, or maybe you don't like that tightness and this is a good expansion for you, and I would be fine playing with it again, but I don't think it's a necessary expansion at all. I think I'd be happy playing without it.
So Tim, are you saying you actually enjoy some of the player interaction here? I know this is a common thread of Dig Up. Sometimes you weren't the biggest enjoyer of too much interaction, but this game gives you the right kind of interaction.
Yeah, we'll talk about too much interaction because there was plenty of too much interaction later this weekend, but not from Barrage, because I think Barrage, once you understand the game, you can mitigate where there's potential of interaction. The first play, it's very hard to do. I just actually taught this game to a friend this week, and I try to explain things to him, but it's really hard to wrap your head around everything that can happen. And I felt bad the whole game because even though I was trying to help him, there was no way he could possibly win that game. But he was a good sport about it. But I don't like that in a first play, a game can crush you. Past the first game, though, I really love what Barrage does, and I feel like I missed out on a good first in-person play of Barrage. So that was a little sad for me. It's probably my biggest letdown of the weekend. What otherwise I was really excited about.
I don't have much more to say because I agree with everything that you guys said. The only thing I'll add is just, like you said, Tim, maybe if I played Barrage a lot and I was starting to get tired of the base game, maybe the expansion would add something.
Mm-hmm.
And it also gives you that opportunity, maybe if you're playing a game, especially at a higher player count, where you're just like, man, I'm frozen out of the main board. What can I do? It could stop somebody from having a ruined game because there are other options to go to. But for where we are and for the way we play and the number of plays we have, it took away from the game rather than adding it. I leave open the idea that it may have utility in the future, but for right now, did not love it.
All right, so that was the last game of the day. And since Chris got there at noon, we got 2 plays in. That's it. We played slow this weekend.
Oh, we forgot an important point, Tim.
What's that?
Who won Barrage?
Chris, why don't you tell us who won Barrage?
Well, my concerns about the expansion were not enough to stop me from winning Barrage, baby.
So Chris had a great start, 2 wins at the start of the con. Yeah, so anyway, we played pretty slow that day. Really got 2 big games in, went to bed. After a little walk to the beach, we made a plan this trip to finally get all 3 of the Ericling Troops on a Map trilogy in one day. So that was our plan for this was for Saturday morning, and basically to spend Saturday playing Ericling games. And we started out first thing in the morning on Saturday with Blood Rage, then went to Rising Sun, and then went to Ankh. So let's move on. No, I'm kidding. We're actually going to do a full episode on this. In a couple of weeks, you'll hear a full episode, kind of a revisit of all 3 titles back to back to back and our thoughts on them. But we're not going to spend any time on those today. I'll just mention really quickly that I think Adam pulled off a big win in Blood Rage. That was really exciting, really tight game there. Steve ended up winning Rising Sun, and then Chris won. Okay. Well,
let me talk about this one. And I'll just do this one little anecdote from the game, just because it's not that important for the review, but man, it was a highlight of the weekend. So one of my big complaints about Ankh from the first play was I didn't like the merging losers function at the end of the game. And I was kind of under the impression that once you're in that boat, you're not getting out. It's kind of a Hail Mary. Maybe you get an opportunity to stay in the game, and maybe you get a little bit extra and you can make something out of it. That's kind of how I went into this. And so 2/3 of the way through the game, Steve and I are the 3rd and 4th players, and we're not even out of the red zone yet. And so it's not looking good for the home team. And so we merge, and I still don't know what the heck we did, but we just started barreling up that track, and we ended up pulling out a pretty decisive win. It wasn't even like we eked out the victory. We rocketed ahead, and it was so epic because nobody saw this coming. I think, Tim was sitting there like gasping and crying, and Adam his mouth was hanging open like, what just happened here? And Steve and I were both like, crap, did we actually do that? Man, did that feel good.
Well, Adam and I have a lot to say about this because we talked about it almost the whole rest of the weekend, but I think we can save most of that for the next conversation.
Oh, it's hard to keep my mouth shut. This was such a fun game.
All right. Well, somewhere in the middle of there, we had to go get lunch, and we went over to the Chicago style pizza place, and they tend to take a long time making pizzas. So we brought a little game while we're waiting for our food. We brought Shamans, which we talked about at our first BGHT con back in Palm Springs. And this was only my second play of it, but Chris and Adam own it. But I was excited to get back to it. This was my favorite moment of the weekend. We played this game, and it's an okay. Like, I like the game. I really do. It's fun. We ended up playing it again. We'll talk about that in a minute. It's a decent game. Some fun ups and downs, fun moments. I decided by the end of the weekend that I'm just not going to talk at all while playing this, because there's no way that I have so many tells. People know who I am. I got to tell this story. So the last move of the game, I'm really high. I was at like, you win by getting to, what is it, 8 points?
Yeah, 8 points.
You get the 8 points to win. So I'm at 6 points. Whether I win as a shaman or a shadow, I'm going to win this game. And Adam is at, I think, 7 points or something like that, or 5 points.
I think he's at 5.
Okay, so Adam's at 5 points. I'm at 6 points. And someone deals out the cards, and we're looking at him, and Adam goes, I'm not even looking at mine. And Steve nearly goes ballistic. He's like, what do you mean you're not going to look at yours? And Adam's just like, I'm not going to look at my card at all. I don't even want to know. I just want to play so that I don't know what it is, because then you guys won't know. And Steve just got so flustered. He got so frustrated. He was he was just like, you got to look at your card. Are you kidding me? You can't not look at your card. And so Adam just starts kind of playing willy-nilly. We're like, he doesn't actually know what he has. So he's just kind of, playing for fun here. Adam ended up winning. He had looked at his card at the start of the game and told us that he didn't, which is, of course, this game is all about bluffing and lying and hiding what you're doing, and managed to completely trick us because he said that little thing at the beginning of the game. Totally blew us away. It was like this big explosive moment when he ends up winning the game as the shadow and getting the last 3 points and winning the game.
That was so great.
Adam, how do you feel about yourself after that?
Well, it wasn't a lie because I'd already looked at my card and put it back down. And I said, guys, I'm not even going to look at my card from here on out. In the future, I'm not even going to look at my card. So that was a fun one. I didn't know if it would work or not. It was just fun seeing Steve.
It was so riled up.
Steve get all riled up and just going, he was freaking out. And then at the end, he's like, I knew something wasn't quite right, but I couldn't figure out what. And he's like, of course you looked at your card. So that was a fun moment.
So Adam wins by lawyering us to death.
Yeah.
Another point, we played Shamans a couple times this week, and I've heard complaints that there isn't any agency. There's not much to do. I disagree completely. The more I played this game, I saw ways you could take control. I don't want to drop any strategy tips, but if you're the shadow and you retain one of the dagger cards for the entirety of the game, it prevents other people from activating any of the dagger cards.
Yeah.
There's a lot you can do to control the game. And by our second play, I felt like I could make some very clever plays and do some tricky things.
Yeah, I agree. And this is one of those things, like any trick taking game, actually, it's just kind of the strategy starts to come to you in many ways, but this one's got, of course, layers on top of it. And it was really fun. And I actually was really excited because I'm not great at it. I'm terrible at bluffing. And yet I managed to be very competitive both games. I think I was like just about to take the win in both games we played this weekend and lost on that last play. But it was fun. And there's fun things you can do. There's decisions you can make to, give your tell, but also to protect yourself. You said you've heard complaints that there's no agency. That was from Kellen from the Board Game Barrage podcast, who we got into a little chat with it on Twitter because we talked about this on one of our previous episodes. I forget which one it was. And he was saying, I don't understand why you guys like this. And they talked about it on their podcast. But I got to tell you, Kellen, we're not seeing it. Like, there is a lot of fun opportunities in this. Maybe you had a bad play. Maybe you're with the wrong group. I don't know. But it's a fun game for what is, kind of gentle, basic mechanism set. But there's a lot of excitement in this game. We played it 4 players, and then we'll talk about a 5-player game coming up here. Anyway, big win for Adam. So we're now at, I don't even know where we are at this point, 2 versus 1 or something like that. We're all competitive except for me. I'm completely out of the race still at this point. So the next game was my pick. And, again, this is where I almost picked Dune Imperium. But the last time I got to play Tapestry with both expansions was in Portland at our last BGHT Con, and I loved it. I had so much fun playing it. And so I really wanted to get another play. And I know that this is not one of Adam's favorite games, or hasn't been, but I know Chris and Steve both enjoy it. We busted out Tapestry with all of the expansions. Yeah, I have a lot to say about this. I'll just say that I still love it. I still love it. I understand. Well, Adam, tell me about your experience with Tapestry. What do you think of Tapestry tonight?
Sure. So this is a game that's perplexed me so many times. It's always rough for me because you guys know it so much better than me, like you mentioned earlier. But I thought I started out strong and I started out doing really well. I was ahead of everybody. I was lasting longer. I had more resources than everybody. So my turns, my eras kept going a little bit longer and I felt great. But then I don't know what happened. I lost momentum by 3 or 4. Maybe that's inexperience or just unlucky draws. Probably a little bit of both. And I just kind of puttered out. And I think by the end, the 3 of us were pretty competitive. But Steve had almost double the amount of points as any other one of us. And to me, it frustrates me, especially if you add that competitive point thing to it where we're tracking points, that somebody can get double the points of the other 3 players, 2 of whom had played a ton. And that's the game. There's just nothing else you can do to remain competitive. And maybe it's like that in a bunch of other games, but it's a little better disguised. And here it's just totally unmasked and you see it right out in front of you.
I feel like, Adam, one of the things that got me with this play and gets me, I guess, with Tapestry overall is how that scenario can happen and you don't see it coming. That Steve, I mean, I think the first 3-4 eras, well, I guess it's only 4 eras, but the first 3 eras, he was so far in the back. I mean, I was kind of in the back there with him and you had blasted ahead and Tim was up there and Steve was kind of languishing behind. And I was looking at his board, and it was not at all clear to me that he had a strategy that was going to produce anything. And I played the game a lot. I mean, so I know the game fairly well, but it was not clear to me what was happening. And so then we get to the very end, and I'm thinking, oh, we're so close. And then he keeps going and going and going, and he just had some kind of an engine built up there. And maybe that's one of the things that can be frustrating, is that the scoring is a little bit more opaque than it is in some other games, because a lot of it happens at the end of the game. So it's not a huge complaint for me, because I love this game. I don't think I've ever had a bad play of this game, but I can see where that might be something that's a little bit frustrating, especially if winning matters to you like it would at a tournament.
So this is why I wanted to hold my thoughts on it for just a second, because I wanted Adam to have his say here. And Chris, I a little bit disagree with you in that the problem is that the score is opaque, but I think that's actually why it doesn't bother me, because at least it feels competitive throughout the whole game. And even if you have somebody that's going to blast ahead and have a huge score at the end, it's exciting. It can feel close. And then all of a sudden it blows past. And the reality is that I don't disagree, Adam. I think that there is some lucky elements here that can just pay off here. And it doesn't matter who gets them. I also have played this a lot, and Chris and I have played this a lot, and Steve and Chris and I have played this a lot. And if you play it a lot with people who know what they're doing, if you're kind of at the same skill level here, what I found over time is that most games, people are very competitive. Like most games, we're all within 10 points of each other, 20 points. It's very close. But then every once in a while, you can have this huge epic game. And if you're the person having that huge epic game, it's so fun. It's so exciting to be able to do all these amazing things that you've never done before. Like I've probably busted 300 points like 6 times out of the 70 times I played it. I busted 400 points once, maybe twice. And that's exciting, but it's also frustrating for the people who are sitting back waiting for a little bit. Now, my own experience with this game was great. I had such a fun time sitting here doing this puzzle. And the only frustrating thing for me was that, again, being that you were new, like a less experienced player, I wanted to make sure that you were doing okay and kind of watching things. And so it's like, this was an area where I kind of felt like, okay, I got to watch Adam. I got to make sure he's doing his thing, and I got to help him through his income turns and all of that stuff. But I totally get why this feels frustrating to you, especially again in a competitive mode. But there's something about this game that, even though I know everybody probably can't be competitive because of some of the things that might come up in the luck of the draw here, it never bothers me with this game. I always have such a fun time putting this puzzle together. I think Ark Nova is probably very similar in that regard, right? Like, even though you have ways to mitigate it, and you have to play strategically too, right? Like, you don't just get the game handed to you. Still, if Steve made a lot of dumb mistakes, he would have flailed before he got to take advantage of some of that stuff. So you still have to play competitively and play pretty a solid game to get to those high levels. But I also think that sometimes luck is going to give you the win or maybe take it away from you. This is a game, for some reason, it doesn't bother me at all. I never feel like the game was just taken from me from luck. It always feels like I had a fun time trying my best. And sometimes I screw it up. Sometimes I make some dumb decisions and the luck expounds on that. And sometimes I make some good moves and then the luck helps me grow that. So that's how I feel about it.
And I'm going to add on there, I can see the reverse side of it too, where Steve was having this breakthrough game and he was so excited and so pumped because he had like 20 resources, more than any of us. And he kept going and going, he just broke 200. Oh, he just broke 300. How high is he going to go? And he was just like, that's the first time I've ever scored that. He was ecstatic about how well his game was. So no, I totally get it. I can see that side too. That is fantastic that there are those moments in this game where you can break through. That's really neat to see.
One of the funniest images of the weekend was finishing this game up, and I think it was just about 11 o'clock, and this is the one night that we all went to bed before midnight. And Steve, this is like 15 minutes after we finished the game, he's still finishing his turns, and he's counting up his score, and Adam's like sweeping the floor, and we're cleaning up around him. Like, nobody's sitting at the table anymore. Everybody's up doing stuff to get close the house down for the night. And it's like last call, and the lights are on, and there's one dude sitting there, nursing his beer. And so I'm thrilled to death though that Steve got the win. It was an epic win. It was cool to see.
It was cool.
All right, cool. So we the next morning we got up, and who had the next pick? Steve had the next pick here, so I'll just call it out.
Steve had a great pick here. Great pick here for Steve.
So Steve picked Eclipse Second Dawn for the Galaxy, which I think we've all talked about on the show a lot. I think we all have different levels of like for this game. Nobody hates it. Some people love it. It's kind of a group favorite. It's one of the earliest games we started playing together, and we've played it a lot together. So I think there's a little bit of legacy with Eclipse Second Dawn here. Adam, why don't you start us out? What do you think of this play of Eclipse?
So Eclipse, I mentioned it earlier. This is one of the games that when we play it, I'm no holds bar. I'm going to go for the victory. I'm going to do whatever. I really want to win here. And I'm not going to, to the point of being, no one's going to do anything sketchy in this group as far as like bending the rules or like taking extra token, nothing of that. So I'll go as far as I can within my set of principles to win this one. And Blood Rage is another game like that. So we'll talk about that one too when we get to the trilogy. Anyway, this game was another fantastic play for me. Aside, I won't talk about the disastrous water spill that happened on my civilization in an attempt to thwart my future glorious victory here. But it was fun. You know what? I'd asked at one point, Tim, are you playing this game any differently? No, you didn't. You ended up going for all the points right in the early part of the game, making yourself a huge target.
Oh, is that why you're asking that? You're trying to let me know why I'm setting myself up for failure.
I had to sweep through and take some of your high point territories away and try to go, use it as excuse. I'm going to go fight the last guardian over there. I just need to get some points. And your territories happened to be there. There was some fortunate dice rolls. Were they fortunate, or had I stacked the probabilities in my favor? We'll never know. Well, we can know if we want to figure out the problem, but that's a different show. It's just a fantastic game, fantastic Ark for me. I love this game every single time. In Eclipse, I can't say enough.
So this is a game where player interaction can be harsh. It can be frustrating. And there's something about it. I think, this weekend taught me a lot about myself, about my gaming collection, about my gaming capabilities, and about my gaming tastes. And we played a lot of area control games. We played a lot of high conflict games this weekend, and probably a similar mix of Euro games. And the thing about Eclipse is that I always enjoy the Euro parts of it. I love the resource management. I think I do really well at it. I think I plan my rounds really well. I think I take good advantage of the technologies that are available and build up my ships optimally and try to make sure that I'm doing 2 builds at a time, that I'm, playing my faction to the best ability. And I think I do all that stuff really well. And then inevitably at some point, Adam goes, hey, do you guys notice that Tim's getting ahead with the score here? Maybe someone should start moving it on Tim. And somehow everybody always believes Adam every single time. If I said that, here's what would happen. If I said, guys, do you see how Adam's getting away with it? Steve would yell, oh, is Tim saying something? We better go after him. But somehow Adam says it and people actually listen to him and he goes after me. And I get it. It's playing the game. And ultimately, nobody else did go after me, but Adam did go after me, which I wasn't surprised by. I didn't build up a big enough defense force. That was on me. I know I can't trust Adam in alliance, and I let him get away with walking all over me. But in combination with that, it wasn't just that. Like, Adam, I think I did leave myself a little bit open, and you built that warp, whatever it is, the warp gate or the warp portal or whatever, right before I was going to take it. I got to protect myself, because I did a good job of building up my territories where I was almost completely closed off. There was only one space to get into me, and I had some protection. I had pretty good forces built up there, but the warp gate technology came up, which allows somebody to move across a territory that isn't open. And I was about to build it on my next turn, and Adam takes it. And I was like, crap.
It's the wormhole generator, Tim, the wormhole generator. So you can build the other half of those wormholes and travel right through them. Yeah.
So Adam picks it up, and I was like, okay, there's only one reason he's going to do that. So almost immediately he moves in and starts attacking me. But the funny thing is the round before I had gone and I'd taken the center, I'd taken that big GDCS thing in the middle of it. And as Adam said, that was probably a dumb move, because it sets everyone thinks that Tim's going to win. But I wanted to get in there first. I had the right forces for it. I felt I could get pull the badges out, get the points for it, and hopefully hold that territory. And I think I did. I think I managed to intimidate everybody else off of that space. Nobody else ended up coming in and taking it. But it left me a little bit open on that backside that the warp gate generator opened me up for. The funny thing is, the next turn when Adam is about to go in there, but I didn't know this yet. I go and I take this little space that has these alien ships on it. And Chris owns the territory because he's got the faction that works with the aliens. So he owns the territory, but he doesn't get in fights with the ships. So I go in there just to take the ships, but Chris surprises me and sends one cruiser in. And I had 2 cruisers in there. He sends one cruiser in. And then on the backside, Adam comes through this wormhole generator with a Corvette. And I've got a base, and I throw another ship up there. maybe that's how it happened. In any case, I know that I got into like 4 battles with Adam where he had these little tiny Corvette ships.
The interceptors.
Yeah.
Loaded my interceptors up with the plasma cannons, or the rift cannons, which they're like a hit or miss. There's no numbers on them associated with that. So a little bit different. And if you, it's like a suicide mission for these little guys that come in there and blow holes into space and try to take out other ships. So they can also take out themselves.
So that one round I did that. He comes in from the backside. So I lost some resources that way. Chris comes in from the other, I went to attack this one space. Chris took it and I didn't get the gold I needed. So I couldn't support my civilization. And I had to get rid of a whole bunch of discs, which wiped out half of my territories. And then Adam just like walks through the backside and takes over the rest of them. And I couldn't win another battle against him the rest of the game. So I made a couple mistakes there, but I thought I had a sound strategy. But it's just like, there's something about that where it's like, this isn't about how I play. Maybe it is how I play the game, but I'm not good at playing a game where other people are the factor. And I guess that's my main concern with these. I still had a fun time with it. It went long. There was a big, exciting moment in the game, got all of our blood rushing. Chris, how did you like Eclipse? Oh, Chris, I don't think Chris wants to talk about this game of Eclipse.
Yeah, I mean, and not a lot to say that we haven't already said a lot. We said a million times about this game. It's such a great game. This was one of my favorite and my least favorite plays of this game. Most favorite because I feel like I actually put together an effective plan and I was doing pretty well with it. Least favorite because I thought there was an unfair rules call that made me pretty unhappy and kind of took me out of the second half of the game. So I wasn't thrilled about that. But in the end, the game is more important than the specific play. And the game, once again, just proved itself to be a shining example of a 4X game. And I love it. And the one thing, mechanisms wise, that I just want to reiterate again is so brilliant is the technologies in building up your ship. I so enjoy that part of this game.
Absolutely, Chris. And one thing I want to mention too, we didn't count their surviving alien ships in your favor at the end of the game, I don't believe. So I think that was at most 3 points.
It probably would have put you in second place. That's a good point. It was like 2 or 3 points. Yeah, because we were all like...
There were none.
Oh, are you sure?
Yeah, we counted them.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, yep, they were all gone.
Okay. So yeah, the game ended up like usually the top players usually end up in the mid 30s, low to mid 30s. And then the worst, maybe someone who's having a really bad game ends up like 17, 18. In this game, we had 3 people at like 26 and Adam managed to get like 34, 35, which is like a normal game. But it was kind of a weird mix of score this time. I want to go back to what Chris mentioned about the rules, because actually this is a topic that weighs on me a bit. And it's part of the challenge of this hobby. There's a lot of challenges with it, but part of it is because of the complexity of the rules and the excess of them. And I think this happened several times during the weekend. It's hard to, even if you know a game well, it's hard to always remember all the rules. And it's hard to make sure that everybody at the table remembers the rules right. And so that's a challenge with the hobby. And it's something that, especially when you're playing competitively, causes problems. But this time, Chris had the right to be frustrated. And I feel that we missed an opportunity to make it right. Basically, what happened at one point in the game is Chris was talking about, I can't put this technology on my ship because my ship's filled. And Adam said, no, you can overbuild. You can build over another technology because that's how he remembered the rules. And I think, I even feel like Steve might have said like, oh yeah, that's fine. But I think he was distracted, right? I think like Steve was taking his turn and I think he kind of agreed with Adam on it. So Chris heard that the ruling is, oh yes, you can overbuild on your ship. So Chris set himself up for like 3 turns to buy technology that would allow him to build up an energy source over one he'd built previously so that he can then add more missiles and stuff like that. And then Chris goes to overbuild on his technology and Steve goes, no, you can't do that. And we're like, wait a second, we just talked about this. And he's like, no, it's in the rules. So he looks up the rules, which we have to do that several times, sometimes during a game of this weight. We look up the rule. Oh, no, you can't build on the technology. And Chris like, oh, okay, well, I'll figure out some other plan. But, we made the ruling was already talked about earlier. We should have let him do that one thing because we made a mistake. And so I felt really bad. And I didn't realize until, a couple turns later, because I was distracted. I'm trying to think through my strategy and stuff like that. I don't think it was intentional at all. I think it was just like some misinformation that was handed out and then we didn't really deal with it the right way. It made me feel bad for Chris. His game was ruined because of what somebody else said at the table. That's frustrating. Nobody's intentional fault, but it was our fault for not just like fixing it to make the game better. And I'm sure if we would have, here's what I think would have happened. If we would have said like, okay, Chris, you know what? We made that mistake. Go ahead and do it. Steve would have said, oh, I would have been planning to do that earlier if I hadn't, And so it's like, do we want to fight over this? Chris let it go, but you probably shouldn't have. You probably should have, not let us hit you on that one. So sorry about that.
In the end, and I appreciate you guys are being very gracious about that. And in the end, I think it's just a testament to how great our group is that I know nobody was doing that because they were being overly competitive or anything like that. It was just a thing. I know there are game groups where people would do that because they're getting overly competitive and they'll do anything to score a win. And I know you guys would never do that. So no sense crying over spilt milk. I mean, bottom line is this game is awesome. I actually had a really good play of this and enjoyed the game even with that. So kudos to Eclipse.
Yeah. And I did too. And I knew Adam was going to be a traitor to me. And so it didn't surprise me. And it wasn't even that bothered me. Like I knew I set myself up. I knew he was going to come in there. The thing that bothers me about this type of game that happened many times over the weekend with the area control games is people saying like, hey guys, did you notice that Tim's winning? You should go take care of that. And see, when I'm playing a Euro game, there may be some opportunities, but there's rarely an opportunity where there can be like a gang up situation. That's less fun. It frustrates me when that happens. So again, that's part of the game. Some people love that. I think, that's an exciting part of being at a table and being able to interact with people. But it continues to be a frustration for me when it happens. It's just like, oh my God, are you kidding? Let me play my game. You play your game. Don't tell everyone else how to play their game. Like that bugs me. All right. Well, Chris, what was your next pick for the weekend?
This I knew because of the timing. This was on the afternoon of day 3 that this was going to be my last big pick. And I knew that it was probably going to be the last big pick for any of us just because we were getting to that time of the day. And so I went with Terraforming Mars because it's a game that I actually haven't played in quite a while. I was ready to get that one out. And I picked, I think, 2 or 3 of them. I can't remember what the other ones were, and I threw them out to the group and said, hey, of the bunch that I just picked out, which one would you guys want to vote on? And the will of the group was Terraforming Mars. I was actually thrilled about that. Everybody likes it. It's such a fun game. And it's a game where all of us, I think, have equal abilities in it. Like all of us kind of know the game equally well, more or less. Unlike some of the games this weekend, there wasn't anybody who was kind of learning the game for the first time or not, or had one person had played it a whole bunch. And so I love that when we have a game where we're all kind of hitting on all cylinders and killing it. And this game was like that. I mean, the points were flowing. I forget, somebody had this mega engine. It was Adam, I think, had this engine where
he was getting everything for free.
Right. He had like 15 of those blue cards that let you take extra actions, and everybody had something really good going on in this game. And it was so much fun watching everybody's engines take off. And I had my own engine, and can't remember what my specific strategy was.
I don't think you had one, Chris.
It was heavy Jovian tags. At least that's what pulled it out for you at the end.
Oh, yes.
But that's right. You did win this one, didn't you?
So for me, my engine was all about Jovian tags. I was able to put together 2 starter cards because we played with the Prelude expansion. And so I got a corporation that had a Jovian tag benefit. And I had a starter card with the Prelude expansion that gave me a Jovian tag benefit, and another gave me a titanium benefit, which all, of course, works together really well. And then by the grace of God, in 2 cards I got, each gave me a bonus for Jovian tags. And so a combination of, I think, relatively good playing and some amazing luck getting the right cards. And I was just like, I think I got like 20 points in just card scoring at the end from all the Jovian tag stuff. And that felt so good.
Felt bad for me because I was the one passing to Chris during the draft. So that was, although I think we were, I don't think we played that right. Aren't we supposed to switch draft every generation? And we didn't. We just kept drafting the same direction every generation. Oh, oops.
Whoops.
Asterix win.
This game was a lot of fun. The Jovian tag strategy is one of the riskiest, most exciting ones to play with in Terraforming Mars. I think you got to keep an eye out for those 1 per Jovian tag scoring cards. I think you had a couple of those. I intentionally kept one of those for making it around the table to Chris because I knew what he was looking for. I had the big lead going into final scoring. I thought I had this one pulled off. There was a move I could have made early in the game. It would have helped me out. I didn't do it. Chris made me pay the price, and he took the victory on one of the final point scoring tallies, leapfrogged ahead. It was fun to play this game and revisit Terraforming Mars.
This was so good. And this funny thing is this game, like Terraforming Mars is kind of known for going long. I think this was our briskest game of the whole weekend. I think we played in like less than 2 hours for Terraforming Mars. And it was such a blast. It was epic. I remember early feeling like really run down because you guys beat me to all of the I didn't get one of the awards, and I was so close on a couple of them. Like people kept taking the awards right out from under me, so I didn't get any of those. I was like, oh, I'm out of this game. But I managed to pull off some pretty good scoring on the other side, the milestones, yeah, or whatever. But it's the opposite. Yeah, the milestones we didn't get. It was the awards that I managed to get some on. But I had a fun engine going too. Like I built the Space Force or whatever, where you build up a ship for every titanium, which is worth a point at the end of the game. And I happen to have a titanium production for my Prelude card or for my corporation card. And so I started building those at the beginning of the game. And I was so excited. I was like, yeah, I'm going to run up some points. I had all kinds of fun stuff going on. This game is such a great game. Probably my favorite. I think this was my favorite of our 4-player games of the whole weekend. And it was pretty competitive. I think everybody was in with like 5 points at the end of the game. Like it was close. Everybody did well at it. Everyone had different strategies. It's a little bit of interaction on the board, but not too heavy. It was mostly us doing our own thing. But it's just comparing this to Ark Nova is interesting because it's just so streamlined. Like you're just dealing with your tableau of cards in front of you and the board in the middle. It's not like you got the zoo map and your tableau and this other board that you got to race to and the cards in the middle. And it's just like there is something about this where it's compared to Terraforming Mars, but it definitely is more streamlined. It's a little bit just easier to kind of go through.
Agree.
And I had a really fun time with it. So we moved on to before dinner, Adam picked a little bit lighter game. And I was so happy. I think he might have picked it for my sake because I really wanted to play this again. We did a review of Age of Galaxy about a month back or so. And I really wanted to try this game. It comes in this little tiny box as we talked about, pulled it out. And this game did not disappoint. I'm in love with it. I think this was one of my other favorite plays of the weekend. Maybe this I even liked more than Terraforming Mars. It was really interesting. My only complaint with the game. Well, Adam, you picked it. Why don't you start?
Yeah, I picked it. I wanted to get to the table again. I think we had some similar thoughts about it. You mentioned something about had you not picked this, it might have just fallen to the wayside and kind of been ignored. And I was feeling the same way, like, hey, let's try this game. Was it really that good? We didn't get the full force of it as we played on TTS. We talked about some of the complications there. So we played it in person. And that's kind of the setup, Tim. And I am excited to hear your thoughts on this one.
Chris, I want you to jump in first, actually, because the reason I think on our review, I think you were the mildest on it. Like Adam and I both really liked our first play. I think you wanted to try it again, but didn't love your first play. How do you feel about Age of Galaxy? Because I don't remember you saying much about it the night we played. Which play meant you hated it?
Yeah, no, I didn't hate it. I think it was one of the ones where I said I didn't love it on first play, but felt like there was enough there that it deserved a second look. Mm-hmm. And so I wanted to give it another try. And on second play, it definitely moved up in my estimation. I had more fun than I did the first time. There's something about the way this game is structured that still leaves me scratching my head. Like I can't quite put together certain things. And like 20 times, I asked questions and Adam's like, look at the damn card. Look at the rule book. It says it right there. But which he was totally justified in doing. It was definitely a lot more fun once you get your hands around it a little bit more. I still have the complaint that the production is so mild in so many ways, but I guess really the star of the show here is those cards. And the cards are a lot of fun. The cards have great art on them. And I will say this, I am not one of these people like you guys that fetishizes a small box.
Whoa.
I mean, I love having big boxes on my shelf.
Whoa.
But you guys are always like, if anything, I can get something in a small box. I love it. I was blown away that they packed so much game into this tiny box. I mean, it was literally, like the size of my iPhone and like 1.5 inches deep. I could slide this thing into my back pocket and you get this full game in it. I was blown away by that. I thought that was impressive.
I don't think fetishize is quite the right word there, Chris, but I do love me some small. I do love me
fanatical.
Oh my gosh, you guys. I love me some small box. I can't say that. I love me a game that fits in the small box.
He loves small games and he cannot lie.
Yeah, I do.
You're saying you like a small package, Adam.
That's all of those. Whatever you guys want to say. I love this board game. I think it's amazing that it fits in a very small volume of cardboard. Tim, I think you enjoy that too, but you also, one of the things you said to me about 40 times during the course of play
I did.
was that you want to see a full-size production of this game. Talk about that.
It's in a small box, but it's in too small of a box. And this is like when I say I want a small box, I want to Garphill Games 8x8 box. I don't want like a 3x6 box. Okay, one thing I gotta say, first of all, is that Adam had these little, like, he had the deluxe pack, which was another separate small box, and it came with these little ships. But the hilarious thing about the ships is they're like super flat. They look like they were pancake. They look like in a Roadrunner cartoon where it got run over with a steamroller or something like that. Because the ships are super flat, which is cute because they're little 3D ships, but they're intentionally super flat so that they'll fit in these tiny boxes. So it was funny. It didn't detract at all. They were all unique sculpts. I thought it was really cute that they did that. My biggest complaint, really two things about the production, and then that's the only complaints I have because I really love this game. All the kind of like main player board stuff is super, super thin card stock. And again, I'm sure it was done in the intent of fitting it in this little box, but I wish they would have added 1/2 inch to the box size height and then put some decent sized cardboard pieces in here, or a little bit thicker cardstock at least, because it felt cheap. It cheapened the experience of what was otherwise the cards are not cheap at all. The cards feel like an epic board game card, and it has so much cool stuff going on each of these cards. And we started playing, we decided to draft this time because we didn't last time. And as we're looking at the cards, I was like, oh, there's too many cards here to draft. There's too much information on these cards. But I'm so glad we drafted because I had such a fun choice of things to fit together by the end, and fun little choices to make. And guys, I got to tell you, I put together one of the coolest strategies that will ever happen in this game. And Steve took the victory from me, grasped it right out of my hands because he put a cooler strategy together. This game was so great, and I can't wait to play it again. I played like a super aggressive strategy this time, but it got hard because other people would kind of like run up on my ships, and then I had to like change my strategy and do things. So I had a complaint when we reviewed this saying, I'm afraid that you're going to kind of plan out your game at the start and then just do that thing. And it didn't play out that way at all. And I felt like I did have to kind of react to what other people were doing. And that was really fun. It was really cool to see that happen. I just love this game, but it just needs like I talked about going with thicker cardstock. That's not what you need to do. You actually need to give this game a full production. You need to give it a full 4 outsiding board. It doesn't have to be a huge box. This can be like I said, Garphill game size box with a little board that folds out to like a 16-inch by 16-inch board. You got space out there. You've got like, the tracks that you need to follow and the action spaces. And all that stuff printed on one board would just make this feel like a real experience instead of a little cheap, flimsy experience, because it's not a cheap, flimsy experience. But the production detracts, the name still detracts from it, but kind of in a quaint way now. That's my only complaint, is that I was even, I think, a little more disappointed by the production of the main, like kind of the main boards that you have to play on. But otherwise, I loved it. I love the game. I can't wait. I'm going to pick this one up. I can't wait to play it some more.
Speaking of picking this one up, I'm just looking at prices now. Where can you get this game if you want it? Right now, it looks like it's out of print and going for $80 on the Geek Market, $90 on eBay.
No.
Don't pay that much for it. I am sure this one will come back into print. I paid $35 on the Kickstarter for it, and then a little extra for the deluxe. So if you can hold out, just wait, it'll be back out.
This just got distributed. I wonder if I'm surprised they wouldn't have printed some retail copies of this as well. So I wonder if it just hasn't gotten distributed out to retailers at this point or something like that.
It might be the weird gap between Kickstarter and retail availability. Yeah. So hopefully that's what it is. Yeah. Just hold out and you'll get it for the right price.
Yeah, it's definitely not worth that. That's why, like, I'll pick this up for $25 or $30 for sure, because it is a cool game in that, but the production definitely doesn't justify that. And you don't need to overpay for any games. There's so many games out there to play.
Correct.
Very cool game though. Very fun. All right. So that was the final scoring play of the weekend. And Steve ended up taking Age of Galaxy, as I mentioned, just barely. I was winning the whole game, and he pulled it away with like his alien relics at the end of the game or something like that.
He had this card that let him have a private explore action, which gave him 2 chips. He did the explore action. It came down to a 50-50. Which one's he going to pick? He pulled the one that gave him 4 extra points on the last play of the game.
I guess this is just a big luck fest, just like Tapestry.
Well, what was frustrating for me was that Steve and I were actually playing the exact same strategy, which was like, I don't know, collect the most purple horseshoes or whatever. But, and I was doing it too, and he just managed to get more than I did. So
that's right. You guys were totally going after that explore strategy. I didn't do it at all. I had so many fun things going on in this game, and I did not do the purple horseshoe strategy, so probably should have. So Steve ended up winning it, and that put Steve and Chris at a tie, and Adam had to get going, and Steve was like, you know what, Chris, I'll just give you the win because I feel like you deserved it for Ankh. And Chris was like, no way, I don't feel good about that. So they decided to play out on one game of Star Realms, on the app. So they both busted out their iPads, sat down on the couch.
I couldn't believe that they were going to do just one game for the whole thing. Not even like a 2 out of 3, not even like, distribute out the odds a little. Rock, scissors, paper is always 2 out of 3. No, you guys want one game, all the marbles. I was sure Chris is going to take this one. He's a Star Realms legend. People know him. You're at the restaurant. They're like, there's that Star Realms guy. I thought Chris had this one in the bag.
I thought that I had this one in the bag. I mean, first of all, when we sat down and said Star Realms, I'm thinking, well, I've got a huge advantage here. And I know Steve plays it a bunch too. So, I was feeling pretty confident about that. And then a turn or two in, I was feeling really confident about it because there was a scrap card right there at the beginning of the game and Steve passed right by it. And I'm like, dude, you never pass by a scrap card in the first round of the game. A cheap one at that. And he did. And I'm like, okay, well, you just blew it. And I was going to say, well, Steve, if you play Star Realms a lot, you kind of learn that you take the scrap card and, but I didn't say anything. And so another turn goes by and he's doing some stuff. And then I get another scrap card. And then I don't know what happened, but he had no scrap cards. He had a full deck of garbage cards, but he also had these epic drop a green bomb of death on you, blob cruiser and blob this and blob that. And he just kept knocking down my points every turn. I was knocking down old crappy cards and he was knocking my health down. And then it came down to this one last turn where, I could have drawn, the death cards or I could have drawn the scouts. And I drew like my last 2 scouts. And then Steve drew like the green rain of death. And he knocked me out. And it was so well played. I mean, I can't even, like, the 5D chess he was playing to win that game. I was super impressed. And I'm a little sad that I didn't get the trophy. But honestly, that was about as exciting a win as you could get. So hats off to Steve. Hats off to all of you guys. It was a great tournament. And I'm so thrilled that we had so much fun and that game was exciting as it was. So man, so cool.
Now, Adam had to leave and he's got a toddler and he had to go home and help out his family this evening. So we ended the official tournament, but Chris and Steve and I were all going to be there till midday the next day. So we got a couple more games and we'll talk about those real quickly. The first one was my pick. I really wanted these guys to experience Lorenzo Il Magnifico this weekend. I played it and just fell in love with it immediately. And this was going to be my second play. And Adam had been interested. Chris is a big fan of these Italian designers. So I'm like, this is going to be a hit. Everyone's got to play it. But unfortunately, Adam didn't get a chance to. Chris, what did you think of Lorenzo?
I liked it. There was a lot of interesting stuff going on in there. But I mean, I hate to say this because it sounds so shallow, but it is so freaking dry that even with the good mechanisms, I had a hard time getting super enthusiastic about it. I mean, I would definitely play it again. And I thought that there's a lot of stuff in there that was nicely done. But, especially after playing some of the other games affiliated with this group, like Sulkin, highly thematic and cool stuff going on and nothing dry about that, or Gollum, or
Barrage,
for goodness sake, where there's so much cool stuff happening and it's such a cool package of theme. Just having this weird, generic Italian Renaissance era, I don't even know what the hell was going on. So good mechanisms, but just unfortunate with the theme. What did you think of the play?
I loved it again. And this was probably I said, Terraforming Mars was probably my favorite 4-player game. I think this was my favorite play of the weekend. Again, this is one of those rare games where, and the Castles of Burgundy has hit me like this. The first time I played it, as I'm starting to learn the game, I'm starting to realize this is amazing. This gives such cool restrictions, such cool choices. And I felt like that the second game. This is the ultimate engine builder. It's not super complicated. You're buying cards, you're building an engine with them. But what the cards do, the way the engine works, the way the engine runs, the tightness of the space, it's a worker placement game in a weird way, but they're worker placement with restrictions, but they're shared restrictions, so it's not based on luck. I just love how everything works together here. Chris, I agree with you. The theme is dry. There's nothing thematically linked to the mechanisms, which is part of the biggest problem with it. But this is one of those rare cases where I couldn't care less. I have such a fun time with it. And if you're willing to do it, Chris, I would love to review this game. I'd love to. We found it's on Yucata, so we can probably get on, play an easy game on Yucata and actually talk through it, give Adam a chance to play. Because Adam, I think you'll really like it too. I think this is probably going to make my top games of all time list next year. I'm hoping to get a lot more plays of it though. Yeah, I loved it, and I was so happy to get it out again. So sorry it didn't hit for you too much, but I really liked it.
A couple observations. Lots of times, Chris, with these kind of games, these are growers for Chris. In the first play, he doesn't enjoy a lot of these. So maybe he'll come back on a second or third play down the line. Or maybe it'll go the way of Castles of Burgundy, which I feel like that has settled into mediocrity for you, Chris. Either way, I do want to try this one again. I'm more than happy to look past theme if the mechanisms are that good. It's rare that I get to that point, but that's why I'm looking forward to this one.
I would actually really like to play this one again and do a full review of it, because in fairness to the game, now that I'm thinking back through the circumstances around that, it had been a long weekend. A lot of beer had flowed. And this game, we ended at 2 a.m. on the last day. And so I feel like it's hard for me to give it a fair shake. I can look back in my memory and say, there were some really cool things happening, in particular with that really weird worker placement method, that it really had some interesting stuff going on, which I won't say anything about because it sounds like we may end up reviewing this. But I definitely feel like I want to give it another chance to give it a fair shot, because I don't think I could at 2 o'clock in the morning.
Yeah, even if we're going to review it, I want to tell you, Adam, really quickly how this works. Basically, everybody has these 4 workers, and each of them have a different dice color on the top. There's an orange, a white, and a black, and then a generic one. And so everybody has these same workers, but you roll 3 dice and put them out on the board, a black, a white, and an orange. And so the pip value is the kind of the value of the workers, but everybody has the same 3 workers. So if you roll like one turn, somebody rolled like a 2, 2, and a 4. Okay, that's a pretty mediocre hand. This one dice does some pretty good stuff. The other one's pretty hard to work with. And then the next round, like Steve rolls like 3 5s, and we're like, yeah, we like everybody's got big things that they can do, but you're still competing with each other for the same spaces. And then the next time someone rolls like a 1, 1, and a 2, and you know that's going to be like a dry turn because nobody can do anything. But it's a fun puzzle, and basically, you're a lot of what you're doing is going out and grabbing these cards off the central tableau, and you put them into your own tableau to build. And so the workers are how you buy those, and you can buy higher up and get extra benefits the higher pip value you got. So you put these in your tableau, and a lot of them have one-time abilities. But the other really cool thing about it is that there's 4 types of cards you can build, and 2 of them are like these kind of production mechanisms. So one of them is going to produce goods, the other one lets you convert goods to other goods. But you have to activate those cards. So like once you build them in your tableau, they don't do anything. But then there's this other worker placement spot that's really restrictive and really fought off there that actually triggers these rows of cards. So once you've started to build up an engine, then you have to take one of your resource actions to actually run the engine. And it's just, I have such a fun time playing this. There's a lot of easy ways to mitigate there's like this resource you use to spend to mitigate dice rolls. So you have a lot of ability to adjust it. And it seems like there's plenty of those, but you use them up quickly because you want to do these other things, and then you got to get more of them. Fun first player mechanism in this one, kind of like a viticulture type of mechanism. I just love everything about this. So I don't know if any of that sounds interesting to you, but I think you'll enjoy it. Maybe not, because it is dice worker placement.
Hearing you talk about this stuff doesn't make it sound more or less exciting than any other game that we played, but I am looking forward to play this one, and I'm going to give it a shot.
All right, cool. All right, so next morning, we had just a couple hours before Chris had to get picked up for the airport. So we played one final game, and that was Lost Ruins of Arnak. We didn't play with the expansion characters, like the asymmetric characters this game, because we wanted to make it a little bit quicker game. But we did play with all the other stuff in the expansion. Oh, by the way, Chris won Lorenzo, regardless of his mediocre thoughts on it.
No, Steve did.
Oh, really? Okay. For some reason, I had it recorded as Chris. Well, good for Steve. I definitely didn't win it. I remember that clearly. So we played Lost Ruins of Arnak. One thing I'll say about this is, like, when I got the expansion, I was kind of feeling pretty burnt out on Lost Ruins. I felt like it was getting a little repetitive and dry and stuff like that. And I thought originally when I added the expansion that it was the asymmetric characters that spiced it up. I don't think it is. In fact, I think the asymmetric characters like overcomplicate the game just a tad. Not that I don't like to play with them, but I think what really spiced it up was the variety and all of the cards you can get now, the different locations, the monsters, like just playing this. I think this was my favorite way to play the game, was just playing with the expansion content without the asymmetric characters. I thought it was great. There were so many fun decisions, so many fun combos that happened. I thought I was doing great this game. Chris started out with like no extra cards in his hand. He kept drawing his like base set of cards. But how'd it go for you, Chris?
It went well. Went well enough that I won the game. I agree with you that it's better off without the the
Player
extra,
powers.
the expedition leaders, the player
Okay.
powers. I think the observation we all made last time we played this was that it turns the game from a midweight Euro into a pretty heavyweight Euro, to a point where it's not quite the breezy, fun little game that it is otherwise. But I had a great time with this game. The one thing that always knocks me out about Lost Ruins of Arnak is just that fun little phenomenon of there's always some little thing you can do that pushes you to one more turn. In the last round, where I ended up scoring a lot of points, I think maybe 2 or 3 turns in, I was like, okay, well, I don't really have anything else I can do. But oh, wait, then I can buy this blue card, which automatically triggers to give me this thing. And that lets me move up the track, which gives me this thing. And by the end of it, I'd done like an extra 10 turns that I didn't even think I was going to be able to take, all for being able to do these little extra actions based on a previous action that gave me some bonus. And I think that is such a fun part of this game, trying to figure out what is that one thing you can do that's going to get you the thing that gets you to the next thing that gets you to the next thing. And that's a fun puzzle and always a good time.
Yeah, and I think this is best at 3 players. I think this game it shines at 3 players because it's still quick enough, but also it adds a little bit more interaction for the tracks, for the cards, for the spaces. 4 players slows it down a little bit too much, gets a little bit tight. And 2 players is great, but just, there's just less interaction. So I really liked it at 3. This was a really fun play for me.
I think if there was a lesson of the weekend, it was there's a lot of games out there that are best at 3 players. I mean, I think we noted that several times that this game would have been better at 3 players.
That's true of almost every game, but I don't think it's just the games. I think it's getting rid of Adam really helped.
Ouch.
Just kidding.
The one other thing I'll say about the weekend as a wrap up, and I'm not saying this to tease Tim, but was it Sunday night, we went out to dinner and invited my friend Mark, who lives in Long Beach, a good friend from back when I used to live there. And we brought Shamans with us and we played it. And Mark won the game. So in the end, Mark left with more points than Tim did. So nicely done, Mark. It's just one more bit of proof that there's some weird intergalactic phenomenon going on here that is preventing Tim from winning games at cons.
Adam, any final thoughts for the weekend?
Well, I wanted to ask you guys, what were your high highs? What were your best moments? And what were your lowest moments?
There was a couple big moments that were just fun gameplay moments. And some of those we'll probably talk about in the Eric Lang trilogy, because those games are always full of big moments. But that Shamans win where Adam just like bluffed us the entire game was fantastic. My big low point, and I hope I'm not stealing your thunder, Adam, here, was when a glass of water got knocked over all over many, many of the components of Adam's beautiful Eclipse second dong for the Galaxy. But on the other hand, boy, did we rush into action quick, and my heart rate jumped right up there, and I felt much more excited after that moment. So sorry that happened to your game, Adam. I think we mostly saved it, but it was unfortunate. It's never fun to see that happen.
Well, my high point was one that I already talked about, which was that come from behind victory that Steve and I had in Ankh, which I'm still reeling over the fact that we ended up getting that done. And low point of the weekend, it was, and I'm coming up with this now. At the time, it didn't feel like a low point, but it's that I don't feel like I really got to appreciate Lorenzo Il Magnifico for all that it has to offer because of the situation we were playing. It just, too tired, too late, and all that. Which maybe I'll say that as lead into we'll be reviewing that game sometime here in the near future, and I'm really looking forward to digging back into it.
I think the high points for me was watching that merge victory from Ankh. Like you said, Chris, that was cool seeing you guys work together as a team. Your gods had somehow amassed, they must have had the most loyal followers. You guys had like 50 followers each at the time you guys merged.
Yeah.
And then you guys turned those followers into points, sadly, but maybe that's how it works. So that was fun to watch that. Tim, you mentioned the water spill. As Steve and I were going to save this empty plastic water bottle from falling, we both knocked over this full glass of water all over the game. And I was like, uh-oh, we better clean that. And by the time I had thought that in my head, Steve was sprinting towards the kitchen. Tim had grabbed like 5 towels and was dabbing everything. I was like, what is happening here? These guys are like a trained emergency response to board game spills. This is amazing happening. So that was fun to see that. Low point has to be Ark Nova for me. It just was so fiddly and kept going on and forever and ever and ever. And Steve and I looked at each other so many times like, oh, you guys forgot to do another thing. Or, oh, you guys forgot to do another thing. Oh, like, come on, get it over with. So Ark Nova was, I don't get it. I don't get it. There's different games for different people. That one hasn't hit for me yet.
It's so interesting. I mean, what's interesting, not that the game didn't hit for you, because I think there are different games for different tastes, but I think I've heard that similar type of comment with Ark Nova from many people, but so many people must love it for it to be so high in the Board Game Geek top 100.
Agree.
And it kind of surprises me, to be honest, because even though I love it, I can see why a lot of people wouldn't. And I'm actually shocked that it has been quite as well received as it has been.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's a weird one. All right, cool. Well, the one last thing I want to mention, kind of my final wrap up, is one thing I learned about myself, which I think supported a lot of my general attitude about over purchasing on board games, is that I brought about 15 games with me out of my game collection is the largest it's ever been. I tend to keep a really slim collection, but I've got about 50 games there, and I know I've got to do some purging anyway. I brought 15 games with us. We played more games in one weekend than we will play all year, except for the other con probably. And many of these games I will never get to play again this year because I just won't have the opportunity to do it. Out of the 15 I brought, I think we played 6 of them. And that's the most gaming I'm going to get in the whole year. And I was driving home and just kind of going through my head of like, I missed out on some games I really want to play. And yet I've got a collection of games at home that I don't even want to play as much as these. Why are they even there? So I think I'm going to probably call another 10 to 20 games easy. Like, we don't need this many games. Like, play the best ones. Another thing is, we had so much fun going back to games that we already knew. We didn't all love all the games equally, but it was so fun to go back to games that we already knew, and especially the ones that we all loved, that why keep buying more games? So I'm just like, I'm ready to really, really pull back of purchasing new games. I love playing new games. I love experiencing new games, but I don't need to purchase them. They're not going to get played. So for me, this kind of like refreshed my goal to just keep a really tight collection and only keep the things that I love and that I'm going to keep playing.
I feel like my collection as well is starting to plateau. I'm not as much of a purge mindset as you're in right now, Tim. If there's something I feel like fills a gap in my game collection, something that seems new and unique and novel, then I think I want to get it and I want to fill that gap. But yeah, I think either way is a perfect mindset to have about gaming. Mine's going to plateau. Hopefully around 100 games is a number I like. And then that's when I'll start having the in and out, or something very unique has going to have to come along before I will add it to my collection.
All right, well, cool. That'll wrap up our conversation on Board Game Hot Takes LongCon. I do have one quick review I want to read before we wrap up tonight. This is really exciting to see, because this review labeled us as the world's best board game podcast, a 5-star review. This was from Joe Stass in Great Britain. Joe said, I listen to the podcast weekly on Spotify, but downloaded the Apple app just to leave a review. I'll delete it after, but that's how much I love this weekly show about the amazing world of board games. The gang have become my favorite gaming personalities, even if I don't always agree with them, because they keep things lighthearted and fun and always present reasonable, well thought out discussions. I also appreciate their engagement with their audience, from inviting fans to challenge them to a game of diplomacy to letting them eat juicy steak sandwiches at their gaming tables.
Yes.
They really care about their listeners. I hope that this podcast carries on for many years, that I have something to look forward to every week. Thanks. Joe, thank you so much. Oh my God, our listeners are so nice. I can't believe some of the comments we get here. This is so fun to hear. So thanks, Joe. Really appreciate it. Until next week, take care, everybody.
Good night, all.
Bye-bye.